just amazing stuff. So, all right, well, let's see here. 6:02. Where are you, Rizwan? Let's get going and let him catch up.
Okay.
So, all right, guys, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
This is the Iceman John Scully, former boxer and boxing trainer now, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi, today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we've got an interview today that's going to belong in the time capsule for future generations. A short time from now, John J. Responti and I are going to be talking to a guy who, since the late 1970s, has trained Michael Nunn, the Ruelas brothers, Diego Corrales, Joel Casamayor, Shane Mosley, Riddick Bowe, among many, many others. Joe Goossen was one of 10 siblings. Their father was an LAPD homicide detective who investigated some of the most famous cases in West Coast history. One of his older brothers was the youngest Major League Baseball player in the history of the New York Mets when he broke into the big leagues. Another brother, Dan Goossen, was an agent for Pete Rose and Mr. T, and then became one of the best-known promoters of his day. Joe was chief second for Diego Corrales the night he battled Jose Luis Castillo in a fight all of you remember. Many people consider that the greatest fight they've ever seen. Few people on planet Earth have as many great stories to tell as Joe Goossen, and you're going to hear a whole bunch of them during the second half of today's show. Before that, we will get another inside peek at the United Kingdom boxing scene from our inimitable British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin. And right now we're going to talk about the week in boxing with our all-star team of expert analysts. Travis Hartman's a professional boxer, trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto, and John J. Responti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I are co-authors of Intimate Warfare, The True Story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy, which was an Amazon bestseller. The first guy I mentioned, Travis Hartman, is celebrating a successful boxing show, which happened Friday night at Phil Wells Stadium in St. Joe, Missouri, where he served as the promoter, the matchmaker, and one of the featured attractions. Travis, this must have been an emotional night for you because you not only attracted a nice crowd to a minor league baseball stadium a few miles from your hometown and gave the crowd a great lineup of fights, but you also fought and won in front of your hometown audience, which is going to be your last hometown fight. That must have been quite a party, man.
It was very bittersweet, that's for sure. It was worth everything, though. Every bit of stress, everything. And I knew that going in because, I was a promoter, I was a fighter, and I was also the co-main event, but the main event was a women's fight that I chose to put out there. But I also trained the main event woman fighter as well. So I was wearing 3 hats. So it was, you know what, it just seems like that's what I do with my life. As I've noticed in my 35 years, I always try to take on more than I can probably handle. And in the end, I usually end up handling it, but it definitely takes a lot out of me. So I'm super grateful. I came away with a victory, a very, very hard-fought victory at that, and I got to fight in front of my hometown family and friends, and it ended up being a beautiful night for boxing. And we attracted a really nice crowd. And God bless everything because I'm healthy, I'm good. My voice is a little bit hoarse because I was screaming, obviously, because of the main event. I was yelling instructions, and the crowd was really loud, so I had to scream a little louder. So overall, it was really awesome, Dennis, and I feel very proud of myself too because I'm trying to pick up with the times, and that's why I made the women's the main event, and it more than delivered, Dennis. That was the cool thing about it is it ended up being a very, very good decision because my women's fight ended up being probably the most exciting fight. And I'm not taking anything away from my fight or the rest of the fights because I had some exciting fights. You know, I had a guy named Donnie McQuarrie who was on season 3 of The Contender. I had him on there in a 4-round fight. Matter of fact, Dennis, so I had Donnie McQuarrie in a 4-round fight, and he faced off against the guy who knocked out Marcellus Weiler just recently.
Really?
It was one heck of a 4-round fight. And then I had a couple heavyweights. I had a little bit of everything. And then I ended, you know, with my fight, and then the ending was the women's fight. So, again, like I said, it's women's boxing is trying to make a run right now. And I think a lot of promoters in the world are trying to put it out there more and more. And you know, and I put it on the card, and it didn't disappoint. And it's going to take a bunch of promoters doing the same thing and putting the women out there and letting the fans see them. And like I said, they didn't disappoint. It was a 6-round fight, and I'm telling you, the women's fight ended up being probably the most exciting fight of my card. And that wasn't because my other fights weren't exciting. That was genuinely because it was a super exciting fight, and the fans were back and forth. And it just ended up being a really, really good night overall. And I was happy to be able to do that last fight back home in Missouri. And like I said, at the beginning of this year, I said that I won't fight in 2020. So I'd fight till the end of the year, but this would be my last fight back in Missouri because now that I live in Orlando, I've lived here for quite some time now. It just doesn't make sense to make that trek back and forth and fight and keep fighting in Missouri. So that was my last fight in Missouri, and I'll probably fight a couple more fights. Hopefully I get some big fights now, and I can keep training my butt off and go out on top. That's what I want to do. I want to go out like I should have been all along, and I mean, training my butt off. I'm in shape, and I'm taking really smart fights and calculated fights, and that's what I plan on doing.
Okay, tell our audience what happened in your fight in the first round. 4-round fight.
Yeah. It's my entire career. If anybody watched the interviews leading up to my fight, my whole career has been kind of up and down. It's been full of drama. It's been full of intense stuff. It's just been funny because in the first round of my fight on Friday night, I slipped and my glove touched the ground, and neither one of us had thrown a punch. Neither fighter. Me, I wasn't even throwing a punch. My fighter wasn't even throwing a punch. We happened to be in a clinch. I spun out. My foot just slipped and the glove touched the ground, and the referee ruled it a knockdown. So I was automatically in the hole of a fight, and it was only a 4-round fight, so if anybody knows, you know, if you get a 10-8 round to start off, you have to sweep the next 3 rounds, to win a decision. And I wanted to knock this guy out in my hometown, and he was a very awkward but a very game fighter. I mean, the fighter just got a draw in a 6-round fight with a guy who was 8-1 down in Miami, Florida. So I knew the kid could fight, but he definitely didn't knock me down. It was not a knockdown. I even spoke to the judges who were judging the fight afterwards, and I asked them. And they said, no, it was not a knockdown, but since the referee ruled it that by their rules in Missouri, they had to rule it a knockdown. Even though they both said that it wasn't a knockdown, a punch wasn't thrown, they still had to rule it that. So in my head, I'm panicking a little bit because I wanted to knock the guy out, but now I didn't want to take any chances. So I had to bear down and literally box smart, keep my hands up, keep everything nice and tight, outpoint the guy, and just fight a really clean fight, and that's exactly what I did. In my hometown, I couldn't go out losing in my hometown. That would have definitely, I'm not going to lie, that probably would have delayed my retirement back home because I couldn't have lost at home. I mean, I just couldn't have. That would just not set well with me for the rest of my life. So I'm glad that I buckled down. I bared down. My fans got behind me. They were, chanting Hartman. Exciting, but a tumultuous fight, especially with that kind of weird slash BS knockdown. But you know what? Nobody's perfect. The refs aren't perfect. I get it, and thank God I came away with the decision. But it wasn't easy, Dennis. I started out, in the hole, pretty much you could say. But that's probably my life in a nutshell, though. It's never been easy. There's always been those ups and downs. So why would it go any less than that? So it's just about par for the course, you could say.
Well, that's good because the Ringside Boxing Show did not send you in there to lose, buddy.
That's right.
Went off this show.
That's right.
Absolutely. I was thinking about you guys. And like, hey, I got to do this show on Sunday. I can't go on there losing because we're going to talk about this. So I'm not even going to lie, it was in the back of my head just a little bit. I'm like, Dennis and Riz and John, they're going to want to talk about me winning and not me losing. So I had to come out and do something.
Okay, let's talk about some of the big weekend fights, if you can call them big. Riz was pissed off immediately. He messaged all the rest of us that PBC fights really suck, something like that. So, Riz, all these fights seem to be a clear-cut A-side guy against an obvious B-side fighter, and at best, and that's disappointing matchmaking, frankly. The most interesting headliner was Richard Comey's firefight with Ray Beltran, which sounded like you were enjoying. It was exciting, no doubt, but it resulted in Beltran tasting the canvas 4 times and Comey coming away with a TKO in the 8th round. The first 2 knockdowns came in the 1st round. There was another one in the 5th, and the end came with a big shot to Comey's chin, left hand, in round 8. Comey is the IBF lightweight champion, and he's got a huge left. And how do you like him in a division with Lomachenko, Pedraza, Teofimo Lopez, Masayoshi Nakatani's there, Lee Selby, Robert Easter, who actually beat this guy by a split decision 3 years ago. How much does Comey impress you, Riz?
I mean, he's definitely awkward. He definitely has power. He's definitely a guy who can pretty much pop at any time. And if you look at Comey's career, he could very well be undefeated. He only has 2 losses. Excuse me. One of them you mentioned was to Robert Easter, split decision. He knocked Easter down. A lot of people thought he should have won. Next fight, a few months later, loses to Denis Shafikov in Russia. Another split decision. A lot of people thought another hometown decision. So easily he could be undefeated. And it definitely seems like should Teofimo Lopez win his next fight, which most people expect he would, that Comey would be next. Now, Teofimo Lopez would obviously still be a favorite in that fight for good reason, but it'd be foolish to count out a guy like Comey, who clearly has, the pop to hurt anyone at any sort of time. Again, looking at even his losses, I mean, this is when Robert Easter, I thought, had a lot more focus than he has now in his career. I'd argue that was probably the best, that Easter was, because that was right after a big win he had over Rodriguez Mendez. And then since then, he's kind of went off the rails a little bit with some fortunate decisions and other things. But, Comey's always impressed, and he's never really been out of a fight, and his power keeps him in it. So I think the thing is, for a guy like Teofimo Lopez, who's been, let's face it, been fed a lot of softballs, guys who are former challengers and all that, but a lot of guys who have zero power and a lot of guys who have, who don't have a lot of power, who can't take a great shot and been knocked out before. When Comey goes up against him, if Lopez can't knock him out in the first 3 rounds, what happens? How does he respond? Because a guy like Comey has been there, right? He's already traveled on the road. He's already, been in some, marquee fights. Lopez really hasn't had to deal with any adversity yet, right? I mean, if you look at the guys who fought, former title challengers, the guys there's not really a lot of pop, and it's the old Mike Tyson adage, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and we haven't really seen Lopez had to take a shot. Now that being said, obviously I think I think he's probably a better rated defense than we would think, but again, it's about caliber opponent, right? Everyone, the guys he's going up against, let's face it, they just didn't belong in a ring with him. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Should he beat Nakatani, which I guess most people are expecting him to. But Nakatani himself, very awkward 5'11" fighter. So very tall as a lightweight. In some ways, I think this helps set him up for a guy like Comey, who's also a pretty rangy lightweight. But I mean, again, I think hearing Lopez talk on Friday about Comey was very different than you heard him talk about anyone else. I think he respects Comey, and I think that, usually the brash, big mouth fighter, for him to be calm and respectful, I think says a lot. So I think that would be, number one, a great fight. And number two, I don't think it's I don't think it's going to be easy. I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of expectation of where Lopez is going to end up in his career, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he wins a fight like this. I mean, I think he's more advanced than Erickson Lubin was when he was 21 and when he suffered his first loss, but it's not a foregone conclusion that Lopez would beat Coleman. But yes, he is the odds-on favorite, and we all expect him to. But again, that being said, Coleman's a game live fighter who has power, who has range, who can go into a firefight. I mean, he got rocked against Beltran that night too. He can't take those shots from Lopez, definitely, but just the willingness to mix it up like that is something that Lopez just hasn't had to do. He hasn't had anyone throwing back at him. So it's going to be it's going to be a tough test for Lopez, and I think after that he'll get that fight. Should he win comfortably and impressively, I think we'll see the fight that he wanted all along, which is Lomachenko.
John, do you agree with Riz that Teofimo is going to be an odds-on favorite when he fights Comey?
Yeah, I think so, and I like what Riz said, and I of course agreed with all of it, really. I was surprised a little by Teofimo after the fight. He was very respectful. He wasn't the brash kid we're so used to. He was more, when we interviewed him, Dennis, where he was saying when he's not in the ring and he's doing his thing, he's quieter and very likable and all that, and he was more like that. It was very interesting, and I thought, wow, he must really respect Comey's talent, that he's not doing anything stupid or whatever. He was respectful. He had his picture taken with him. He even pointed at him, and it was like, wow, this is certainly different. But Teofimo's got some intangibles that Comey probably hasn't dealt with in his career. But, see, that works the other way. Comey has intangibles. Plus, what I like about Comey, and you saw it against Beltran, is Comey has a lot of heart. He's got some moxie, and he's a determined guy. And it took him a while to win a title, and he was thrilled to win that title. I believe he's 32 years old, so he's no kid. And he wasn't given a title like some guys or led along a gold path. He had to really work hard to win a world title, and he cherishes that title. So he will probably be the guy that I think he will be the guy that pushes Lopez a lot further than he's ever been pushed in his career. I think we can all agree on that. I don't even think Lopez has really been pushed. I think Comey will do it. And Lopez is a slight favorite, I would say, but it's no given that Lopez is going to win that fight. Comey's got that intangible that I said, where I just have a feeling that guy, he is a Rocky in a sense that he's got a huge heart, and Lopez better take care of business with him and get him out of there if he expects to win the fight fast, if that's what he's thinking, because Comey's going to hang tough, push him, punch him, keep hitting him, keep making him work, and if the fight gets later, he's going to take Lopez to places where he's never been. And then we find out a lot more things about Lopez, and that's always interesting about young fighters. They've never been there, and how he handles it when he gets in the deep waters. Does he drown, or does he come out punching and winning? So yeah, that's the fight I'm really looking forward to. I expect Lopez to win in July, and then to set up that fight with Comey, and that I think Lopez probably wins that one, but Comey is not going to go easy, like I said, and he's going to give Lopez some hell, and Lopez better come in not cocky, and again, as I saw after the fight, he does not appear that way. He's very respectful, so that's good. He's a smart kid. His dad, for all his braggadocio and talk, they both know what they're facing and how important that fight is, because, I think they're going to get Lomachenko. Lopez already said, look, I'm pretty much, I can't stay at 135 much longer. So they might get that fight with Lomachenko early next year or something, and that would also be a super fight. But first he's got to get past Comey, and that's no given.
Yep. Hey, Travis, did you get to see Demetrius Andrade's fight?
I did not get to see that.
How about Charlo? Did you see him?
I didn't get to see either one of them, guys. I was a little busy there after the fights. I was trying to wrap up too, but I seen some highlights of Dimitri Andrade. I saw that he had called out Canelo Alvarez as well. Of course, who wouldn't call out Canelo, right? That's the big money fights.
What do you think of him? What do you think of Demetrius in that incredible middleweight division?
You know what? I think a lot of people actually dismiss Andrade quite a bit, and I can see why. I mean, he's not that exciting of a fighter, but I see him as a rangy, left-handed fighter. He's very smart. He's very crafty. I honestly can see him giving Canelo a lot of trouble, especially nowadays that we're underrating a lot of these fighters, and I think that's why we're overrating a lot of these fighters as well, and that's why I think we just saw Andy Ruiz upset Deontay Wilder, because I think we were rating Anthony Joshua to extremes for the most part. I mean, he is still legit. He just got upset by another guy who's really good. My point is, Demetrius Andrade has skills. The guy is not a dud. The guy can fight, and the guy has proven that. He keeps winning, even though he might not be beating the caliber of fighters that Canelo's beaten. I do think Andrade has the tools, and he's an undefeated champion. I mean, and he's left-handed, and he's got boxing skill. And I see that he has the tools necessary on any given night that he could possibly give Canelo a run for his money. I picked Canelo to win that fight, obviously, but I think it's a fight that would be very difficult because Canelo would have to get up for a bout like that. And what I mean by that is the motivation. I mean, Canelo is used to being in big fights. You know, he's used to fighting guys like Triple G, massive time fights. And I think that for Canelo, an Andrade fight isn't that same adrenaline rush, isn't the same legacy builder, I guess you could say. And I think that when you get to the point where Canelo is, you still have to feed off of that motivation. You have to feed off of those big, massive fights and those fights that get you up and ready for the big one. And for Canelo, I don't think an Andrade fight would get him there. So that's why I think that it has the making that it could possibly be one of those upsets that we've never ever seen coming. Because by all means, Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, is one of the best out there pound for pound in the world. I give him that. I think he's one of the best pound for pound in the world. One of. I don't know who I'd put at one, but I know that he's right up there. So he, by all means, should beat Andrade, but Andrade can fight. Andrade's a lefty. Andrade is very awkward, and I'm telling you, I just fought a very, very awkward fighter this weekend. It's not the same level, middleweight division as well, but I can tell you that awkward fighters give boxers problems, and they make us change our game plan. They make us do a lot of stuff that no one wouldn't do. It makes us uncomfortable. And I think a guy like Andrade would definitely make Canelo uncomfortable. And that's how you beat champions. You make them uncomfortable. You take them out of their comfort zone. And I think 100% that's exactly what Demetrius Andrade would do.
Okay, so Demetrius Andrade won every round in his homecoming fight against Maciej Sulecki on Saturday. He scored a first-round knockdown. Sulecki was 28-1, managed to survive all 12 rounds, but he never really came close to winning any of those rounds, I don't think. Did Andrade make the statement he was hoping to make?
I don't think so. I mean, it's difficult for Andrade because he's not a power puncher, so he's not getting those flashy knockouts that gets attention. He's also not exactly known as I wouldn't say no one's really calling him an entertaining fighter by any means. So, and it's not like his skill is so great that it becomes entertaining. Like, you know, that's part of what Mayweather's whole aura was. Or even, you know, partially guys like Andre Ward, right? It's, he doesn't have that. And he doesn't even have the personality or I would say stupid personality the way guys like Billy Joe Saunders does. But he doesn't have that statement win, because Billy Joe Saunders' statement win against David Lemieux still stands out as, number one. Maybe I have a little biasness because I was 10 feet away from the action. But just he hasn't had a big name like that on his resume. Compared, the guys. Sulecki is I'd say the biggest one he's had, and it still doesn't really move the needle, right? Right. Sulecki's only other loss was Danny Jacobs, and he definitely against Danny Jacobs, Sulecki won rounds. Against Andre, he didn't. So this doesn't move the needle But that being said, it doesn't hurt him at all. I think it's pretty much what we already knew. We knew Andrade is a very talented fighter. We knew Andrade is a guy who could potentially give a guy like Canelo and Golovkin both a lot of problems. And he seems like he's gunning for that fight now. So let's see if it actually happens. And again, if it does, that's going to be very different for Canelo. And I think Andrade is definitely an easier fight than Billy Joe Saunders is. Number one, because of size. Billy Joe Saunders is at 168 right now, probably walks around 175, 180. Andrade just most recently moved up to middleweight. He's only been at middleweight for a couple years now, pretty much. But Canelo hasn't fought a style like this in a really long time. Between Golovkin and Danny Jacobs, who, we expected to move a little more, but he didn't. But between all those guys and even guys like Liam Smith, and obviously Chavez Jr., which was the most forgettable fight ever. But just guys who were straight in front of it. Guys who weren't really moving, guys who weren't, didn't have really a slick style like an Arislani Lara or an Austin Trout, right? This is going back a few years. Canelo's had to pretty much fight one style-ish over the last few years. And, there was more money in there, obviously, and those guys just happened to be the ones who had titles and all those things at the time. So I'm not faulting him for that opponent list, really, outside of Chavez Jr. for obvious reasons. But when if you look at the Amir Khan fight, for example, as much as a bit of a joke that fight was, most people had Amir Khan winning the first 3 rounds because Canelo was missing a lot, right? And it was like his footwork was slow and all those things. And I get it, Khan, was a welterweight moving up, so he had no chin and didn't have power, he also had more speed. But Andrade's a guy who does have a good amount of speed. He does have a good amount of footwork. But he's going to have to move against a guy like Canelo, because I feel if Canelo starts landing to the body, Andrade's going to be in deep trouble. But I think he's doing enough now, and obviously the promotional alignment I think is a huge selling point. I think without that, there's no chance of him getting a major fight. But I think all of that aside, him being with the zone allows him to be likely the next opponent for Canelo. It doesn't seem like Canelo Golovkin's really happening. If it was, we would have heard about it right now, right? No way that fight is happening the second week of September, which is what? Let's say, 2 months away, something like that. Not even. I feel like if it was, I feel like last year we heard about that fight in beginning of June or end of May, right? The fact that delay is happening, it doesn't say that fight's really next. So I feel like, and Andrade's saying, I'm ready for September. I don't need I don't need that much time in between. And we know Canelo's strategy with Golovkin is let's just keep waiting until he gets older. It's waiting for them right now, and they know that fight will be there next year, and they know they can, they know that fight will still be there, and they can cash out. But that means that theoretically, this is probably the only fight that's really around right now for Canelo. And again, it's a different style. It's definitely a different challenge, and maybe that would make him a little more amped up for it, because he didn't really seem that inclined to fight Danny Jacobs, and the fight really wasn't the firefight that we kind of expected. But he's gonna have to work against a guy like Andrade, because Andrade, that's his style. And again, he's not Billy Joe Saunders, but I think that could potentially be an upset in the making.
Okay, so John, Jermall Charlo, the WBC middleweight champ, pitched a shutout on two of the 3 cards against Brandon Adams, who was the contender champion. And a kid we had on the show a few weeks ago, he was outstanding. The striking thing about this matchup to me was the size difference. Oh, my God. Charlo looked like he was a couple of weight divisions bigger than Adams, which I really didn't anticipate that much of a size difference. And it seems like the big takeaway from this fight was that Adams proved he had a lot of courage and really an amazing chin. Did Charlo do anything, in your opinion, to raise his stock in this fight? And what did Adams do for his career, actually, which hopefully will be contested at junior middleweight going forward, not middleweight?
Yeah, actually, I think this helped Adams more in the sense that he's got a great story, as we know. He told us about living in watching his brother almost die in Watts in Los Angeles. He's a great kid. He's got a ton of integrity. He's just a special person, and I was actually very proud of him that he lasted. You know, he can lift his head up and say, "Look, I went the distance with champion." I think that's great. I think that's a moral victory for him. Obviously, he was in there to win. I only saw some of it, but he never quit. He even landed some looping shots against Charlo. Everybody thought, including yours truly, that Adams would get stopped, you know, inside of 10, maybe earlier. I mean, the odds makers had it inside of 5, from what I was told, and he went the distance. So I guess if you're going to say it's a disappointing victory for Charlo, you could say that, even though from what I read and saw, he looked sharp and crisp and like his usual self as far as he was in good shape. He dominated. I mean, that's the hard thing sometimes about boxing. You know, you can win every round and then be told that your performance was disappointing. You know, and it's like, my gosh, I'm trying to knock the guy out, but if he's got a really good chin, what do you want me to do? You know, I can't sneak a baseball bat in here with me. It's just one of those things. And the way Brandon Adams was talking to us, Dennis, I mean, you know, some people talk, but he was saying that he was going to give it everything he did, and I think that was everything he had, and I think that was part of it too. There was no way, even with him losing every round, he was not going to quit. He was going to hang in and absorb those shots, and he was in great shape. So everything he told us was true. So yeah, I think he remember he kept talking about how he's used to being the smaller guy in the ring. He's not very tall, as we saw, and Charlo's pretty tall. So yeah, he looked like, gosh, he looked like his little brother there standing when they did the weigh-in, and half a head shorter at least, and then weight-wise, I'm sure Charlo was weighed quite a bit more, the way things are nowadays. But, you know, a win is a win, so that's boxing. It's what have you done for me lately? So he got the victory, Charlo. He moves on. Adams moves on. He got the moral victory. So really, again, I don't see any losers in this fight. When you're at Charlo's level, though, the pressure, and he's fighting at home, the pressure to be amazing in a fight like this, it's pretty intense. And like I said, everything I've read, every little bit I saw, he was good, but didn't get the explosive knockout that I'm sure he wanted. And Adams lives on to fight another day. So like I said, it's like a win-win, and the Ringside Boxing Show is very proud of Brandon Adams for saying he was going to bring it, and he did. He did everything he could do.
He sure did. Okay, so Travis, Andrade and Charlo are obvious, you know, opponents for Canelo somewhere down the line. But the big headline this week was that Canelo seems to be angling toward a light heavyweight fight with Sergey Kovalev in the fall. How intriguing is that one?
I mean, that kind of leads into what I was saying earlier about Canelo. He needs some motivation or something big to get up for. And I think this, as crazy as it does sound, Dennis, I think this is the challenge that he was probably looking for, because for the most part, Canelo's been the favorite heading into most of his most recent fights. And I think this one, he could possibly, in a lot of people's eyes, be the underdog just because he's the smaller guy. Obviously, he's way smaller. I mean, he's a welterweight that's moved up to light middleweight and then to middleweight, and then I guess even all up to super middleweight. So coming all the way up to light heavyweight to fight a guy like Sergio is ridiculous. Nowadays I feel like, Dennis, in all aspects of life, we're just seeing crazy things happen all over the place. So I know this sounds like a crazy fight and that it could never happen, but the way things are going, I think this fight could possibly happen, and it would just be almost a sideshow type of deal, because it's just that ludicrous how much bigger or how much weight that Canelo would be giving up, how much size he'd be giving up. But could he beat the Crusher? I don't know. Why would Canelo and them take that risk at this point in their career?
That's what I want to know from you too. Yeah. If you're Oscar, Travis, if you're Oscar and you've got your options are Charlo or Andrade or Callum Smith, who's a stud at super middleweight, he's the man at super middleweight. Mm-hmm. If you're Oscar, which opponent is the calculated risk that you want to take with Canelo Alvarez, who is the guy who keeps your entire company afloat?
Yeah, You're so right. But the first thing that came to my mind just thinking about that just now was, if you're a massive underdog, it was almost like when Amir Khan went up in weight to fight Canelo and some of those guys, and he got knocked out. But he went up so much in weight that everybody was like, oh my gosh, gave him so much credit, and a loss really, in a lot of people's eyes, wasn't that massive. So maybe that's what kind of Oscar's thinking, that, hey, even if he does lose, I think he can always go back down there, and then he can fight the Charlos or the Callum Smiths or all the guys that are actually his weight class. But if he does win, oh my gosh, he just beat a full-fledged light heavyweight. So you know what? Maybe that's what it is right there. Maybe I just talked myself into the answer that the risk and the reward is actually right there. Because if he does lose, nobody's really honestly going to say much. If Canelo Alvarez loses to a light heavyweight, people are going to give him a pass probably and be like, oh, you know what? He was a light heavyweight, so big deal. But now he's going to have to come back and fight these big-time, middleweights who are, by all means, that middleweight division is just, it's phenomenal right now, and there's so much to choose from, and there's so many people that are right there on Canelo's radar and right there on Canelo's level. So, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's his risk and reward right there, that he knows that Canelo possibly, maybe Canelo does pull it off, and then if Canelo pulls it off, oh my gosh, that puts Canelo in another stratosphere. We'll be talking about that for a very long time if he can beat, a guy at light heavyweight, which sounds crazy to say because, like I said, Canelo was 144 or 145 pounds or something when he turned pro, I believe. I know he was welterweight, which is 147. So he'd be going all the way up to, 175? 175. It's just unreal. You know what? I guess it's almost like that Manny Pacquiao, where Manny Pacquiao turned pro 108. And then he goes all the way up to, welterweight, which is 147, and that's 7-8 divisions that he went through. So maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to pull an old-school Manny Pacquiao, except this is at a bigger and heavier level than even Manny Pacquiao did. So I don't know what they're doing, but you know what, Dennis? I know that we're talking about it, and I know that it's actually pretty interesting to hear it, and we all know that there's plenty to fight at middleweight. So is Oscar kind of running from the other real challenges and trying to go for something crazy, or what is he doing? But I'm not sure. We never know with Oscar either. Oscar's kind of up and down roller coaster. We never know what Oscar's going to do one day or the next. And I don't think, to be honest, right now, I don't think Oscar knows either. I think Oscar's kind of all over the place too. But I know that I'll be following it very intriguingly because I think Canelo is a very legit, bona fide fighter. And I do want to know what he does next. And if he fights a light heavyweight, I know that all of us on the Ringside Boxing Show will be tuning into that. I think everybody in the world would tune into that. And that's probably the intrigue, and that's probably what they want with their ratings.
Okay, so this next question is perfect for Rizwan Zahid because we all know already know how he feels about this subject, but it also falls into the category of...
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
The WBC, Riz, just created another new championship belt. Mauricio Suleiman has named Canelo the WBC's franchise champion, which clears the way for Jermall Charlo to be named the full middleweight champion rather than just the interim champion. What do you think of this?
Here's what I don't understand. Why are fighters willing to pay the sanctioning fees to hold on to something that's literally made up, right? At this point, I might as well just make up my own title and say that I'm the champ of this and this, right? It honestly, and the shocking thing is the WBA was notorious for this, right? We always knew about the WBA, but it seems like all the other, commissions and fake titles are just kind of jumping on board with the same thing. And it's funny because I think as boxing analysts and experts, we've lost track of the titles. And I think that really says something because it's not like this is before it's like, oh, well, we knew who has this title. We know who has the IBF title. We know who's the mandatory fight. There's so many now, and it's just become a bigger joke. And again, the WBC was amongst that whole class was considered the exception to the rule, the one who, the classic, the one who set the standards. And it's a shame just to see them going down the hill. And it's just, and Canelo had an issue with them. I remember a couple of years ago, and it's like, well, I don't mind. I'm not going to pay the sanctioning fees. Mayweather's pretty much done the same thing. And that's why, like, when I hear, you just talked about Pacquiao's 8 division titles. I mean, they were made up weight classes, not fought at limits, and just let's throw a title in there, right? And it's the WBA has something like 6 titles for each division or something ludicrous, right? It's almost as if, like, and that's why when you feel like, oh, well, someone's fought for the WBA title. Yeah, and he also probably did in his debut, right? I mean, at this point, if you're not a title holder, you're probably a pretty I'm trying not to curse on this podcast, but you're probably not a very good fighter. And I think that kind of that says a lot too. So it's about time. It's about time that kind of fighters ignore it. And there's a difference between guys who want to unify as real champs. I think Spence and Crawford are in that line. Because I think, the titles almost have before the way I think it used to be, at least even 10 years ago, if you have a title, you're one of the top 4 fighters, right? Which is fair. And then let's unify to see who is the, we can have our own little mini tournament and see who's the number 1 guy. That's not really the case anymore. That's what makes guys like Usyk, such an exception to the rule, where he's willing to travel to opponents' backyards and all that just to get the title, and the fighters that you make the title more meaningful than the titles that you are now, which is kind of a total 180. But as far as what the WBC is doing, I have no idea at this point. And as far as when we're reporting on the news of this, I won't personally even reference what title it's for anymore, because I think it's nonsense to even think about it. It's bogus, right? It doesn't say who the quality of the fighter is and what the fight's actually worth. If Canelo and Golovkin's next fight is for none of the titles, does that take anything away from what that fight is? I don't think so. And I think that's a difference between what boxing has become now and what it used to be. If this was 75 years ago and Ali Frazier fought without a title, then you're like, this fight obviously doesn't mean the same thing. That's not what's going on here. I think the titles themselves have mean less and less now. And I just think everyone across the board, from fans to media experts and everyone in between, to be honest, is not really taken seriously anymore. But I don't think the fighters and those within boxing have fully jumped on board with that. But I hope they do, because public opinion, to me, is the biggest title that you can possibly have, right? No matter what leather straps you have around you, if of the public opinion, if fighters think or other people think that you are the number 1 fighter, no amount of titles is going to make a difference, right? One guy could have 8 titles if a fighter has 8 titles but he's going up against Lomachenko, we know who's the number 1 fighter. You know what I mean? So public opinion matters, and it's about time that honestly, we just need to start phasing these titles out. And I think that comes with not giving them attention, because frankly they don't deserve it.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We're talking to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Risponti. John, it sure looks like Jarrell Big Baby Miller barely even nicked himself when he tested dirty before his fight with Anthony Joshua. He lost out on that fight, but he only got a 6-month suspension, which doesn't even amount to a slap on the hand in this sport. And now he's being seriously discussed by promoter Frank Warren as Tyson Fury's next opponent in September or October. So this sure seems like a green light to every fighter in the sport that using performance-enhancing drugs is high reward and low risk, doesn't it?
Yeah, and let me say something about that WBC thing real fast, and I'll talk about your baby. Yeah. The bottom line for me, and we can talk about this, Dennis, because we're so freaking old, is that when we were kids, the champion was the champion. When you would see him on television or talk about him, you would say, that's the champion. Nowadays, especially with the WBC, and my theory, Riz hit on it, he always does that, when Canelo got mad at WBC and said, screw you guys, I ain't paying no sanctioning fees for your stupid title, and walked away, which I loved it when he did that, because I hate that they make you pay for your own title. It's such a ripoff. they haven't been the same since then. More Suleiman and the WBC. They've been running scared from Canelo since then. So I think they did this. They've been doing a number of things. They made a special championship belt hell when he fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. They've turned it into a joke. That's the way I see it. So to make him happy, you make him some supreme champion, and he doesn't have to fight Charlo. And I think I believe it's Canelo who's behind this. I think I think Riz hit it again. I think he's like, I don't want to fight Charlo. I want to fight Kovalev. And Oscar De La Hoya, who did a lot of the same things, he won a lot of titles. He's like, yeah, let's go up and fight a light heavyweight. But I think it's Canelo running the show. I do. I think he's in charge, and he's gotten so many. Okay, just let me qualify this. I've always liked him, and I've respected his talent. But that guy has gotten so many breaks in his boxing career. I mean, you're talking about a guy who fought at catch weight. He'd say, no, I'm not going to want to fight at 155. I mean, remember that. He was determining the weight. He was.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nobody else was. He was. Who does that? Manny Pacquiao did that a few times. Mayweather did that a few times. And this was a number of years ago when Canelo. It's almost like you've got a little babe, a youngster, and you keep on allowing him more and more, and he turns into a monster. Not that Canelo's a monster, but nobody turns him down. Nobody says no.
Yeah, he's wagging the dog.
Exactly. He knows what he's doing, and he knows he's going to get his way. So that's my theory. I think the WBC is so scared of him that if he said, give me a title when I show up next week at your big yearly meeting, he'd say, okay, Canelo, anything you want. I'll give you a fur coat and a title, and you can be the king and sit there. He'd go, okay. That's just the way I got a feeling about that. It's a total ass kissing, what it is. That's the way I see it. Mm-hmm. Now with Big Baby, this is the thing. We all love boxing. We do. It's our passion. We love it. Probably no more than Travis, who's boxed all his life, loves the sport. I love hearing him talk about it because from a guy who's only sparred once, I think, love it to a point. He can love it more. He's bled. He's boxed. He's done everything. He's dripped blood for the sport. I mean, he loves it. This kind of stuff has got to pain everybody when the boxing just says, that's fine. Yeah, you get a 6-month suspension, and now you're going to fight who everybody likes to call the lineal heavyweight champion, which I'm tired of too, Tyson Fury. But whatever, you're going to make a boatload of money in your next fight. That's just dead wrong. That's the thing that makes it hard for boxing. I'm up on my soapbox here. For boxing to get a lot of respect from some people because it always ends up shooting itself in the foot with this stuff. I mean, I didn't want Big Baby to be banned for life, but banned for 2 or 3 years or something significant so he won't do it again. You made a great point, Dennis. A lot of guys are going to go, oh, well, only 6 months. Well, hell with it. I got to get caught first. I'm gonna do this, and I know how not to get caught because there's a lot of guys out there to help me. I'm gonna do it. So it's just a black eye as far as I'm concerned, and I hate the whole steroid thing. I hate the talk of it. I hate the rumors of it. Rumors of people, boxers. I won't say names who are using it. It just sickens me. I hated it in baseball because I want everything to be even. And the worst part is it going to take somebody getting really hurt in boxing, killed or something, and then the person who did it, the boxer who did it, testing positive for steroids, then will that finally take it? And I don't want it to get to that point. I don't want that to happen. So, yeah, I just absolutely hate this.
Travis, you wrap it up on this, on that same topic, the PEDs, because when I was a baseball writer, man, it just really ate at me that some guys were using steroids because you got a guy next to you, say you're a minor league player and the guy next to you is using steroids, and he gets called up and you don't. Man, how bad would and in boxing, your life's on the line. and you're fighting a guy that you know's juicing. As a fighter yourself, how much did that weigh on you? You know, that some guys were doing it. A lot of guys were doing it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, with baseball, like, morally, it's 100% wrong. But I think John and you guys both just touched on the perfect subject of boxing. It's not just morally wrong. It's dangerous. We're already out there trying to hurt each other. That when you give somebody else that unfair chemical advantage, we're talking about lives on the line now. You know, a guy is doing steroids in baseball. He's going to hit the baseball further. He's going to run a little faster. He's not necessarily going to inflict more damage on another man's brain. And for boxing, to just essentially slap a guy on the hand, and he's so right. My passion for boxing runs so deep, and this is very demoralizing and hurtful for a guy like me. I mean, 14 years amateur, bronze medal at Junior Olympics, national champion, 15-plus years as a pro now, and I've never once even sniffed at anything illegal of any kind of substance. And I did things the right way, in my opinion. And to see a guy like this baby just test positive, get a 6-month ban, and then his first fight back, he's going to make millions against Tyson Fury. What kind of example is that setting for anybody? Because if that's what's going to happen, you are 100% opening the floodgates for boxers to take that risk, because the risk is almost little, and the reward, you're going to look at millions, guys. Like, hey, do it. If you get caught, you know what? We're going to slap you on the hand, and you're going to get a massive fight now because your name is out there, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't set a good precedent. It opens a whole can of worms. When you suspend somebody for a 6-month suspension in boxing is nothing, because most big-time fighters only fight once or twice a year anyway. So you suspend a guy for 6 months, that's probably normally what he would have done anyway. So it's absolutely outrageous. And you know what? As much as I like Tyson Fury, I really think I would love to play on Tyson Fury's emotions and feelings on this one and be like, do not give this man this fight. He does not deserve this payday. He does not deserve this opportunity. And I have a lot of hopes for Tyson Fury, and I hope that this camp does not give him this fight, because this is absolutely outrageous. I think that he should have been suspended for a couple of years. I think John is exactly right. People do make mistakes, but I don't believe ruining a career. But you do not get a free pass. I'm saying a couple of years at least. We're talking boxing. Like, our lives are, people die in the ring against other guys who have the same, they're doing it legally. They're not cheating. But now you're letting guys cheat. Our lives are already on the line. Now you're allowing a heavyweight to cheat. He cheated with like 4 or 5 different steroids even. Like, this is, like, my mind's blown. Like, there's so many words I want to say, but I know I can't say them on the air, so I definitely going to hold back. But this has cheapened our sport. This has dirtied our sport. This is absolutely disgusting, and I think it's opening a can of worms that you watch, guys. I think that you're going to see some big-time people out there, that a couple undefeated heavyweight guys that are kind of on the lower scale, they're almost getting ready to break through. You're going to see some of these guys that are going to take that risk of being suspended for 6 months, but go ahead and do steroids, because they know that it's only 6 months. No big deal. 6 months is not a big deal. Then I'll get a big payday, and it's all going to be worth it. So it's a joke. To me, it's an absolute joke. Big baby, do the right thing. Gerald Miller, do the right thing. Tyson Fury, do the right thing. Do not make this fight happen.
Well, and you know what? As boxing fans, we're culpable too. Tyson Fury's got a black mark in his own background. Shane Mosley tested positive at some point. Some of the fighters that we talk about every single day, and that we've all forgotten and forgiven that they did it. So
you're right. You're right.
Should pay more attention to that. All right. And the other big story this week was that Vladimir Klitschko and his family were rescued at sea after their yacht caught fire off the coast of Spain at 2:00 in the morning. Klitschko managed to extinguish the fire before the help arrived, but the yacht was disabled and had to be towed to shore. I don't have any question here for you guys, unless somebody's wondering where Shannon Briggs was when the fire started.
That's what I was thinking. Dennis. I was thinking that's still
I can see it.
one of the
Wouldn't be surprised.
funniest things I've ever seen was when Klitschko got knocked off at, what was he, on a board or something? By
yeah.
And the look on his face was like, what the heck? What was that? And it was so funny that's what I thought when I was glad everybody was okay and everything and all that. But I thought, man, Vladimir better stay away from water because he doesn't seem to have good luck when it comes to that stuff.
All right. That's Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responsi. They're the official oracles of the Ringside Boxing Show, and they are outstanding. Our interview with the legendary Joe Goossen's coming up. But first, we're headed to Great Britain to hear from Paul McLaughlin, who's got great news. He's got news about Cal Yafai and Amir Khan and Kell Brook. It's all straight ahead, so stay with us. Thank you, gentlemen.
You
Talk
bet.
to you next week.
Congratulations, Travis, on your win.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast radio.
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. Well, Cal Yafai made the 5th defence of his WBA Super Flyweight World title after a decision win against Norberto Jimenez in Providence. It was a routine night's work for Yafai, who is Britain's longest reigning current world champion. Despite things never really catching a light, as scores of 119 to 107, 118 to 108, and 117 to 109 saw him retain his belt. Having dealt with his mandatory obligation, Yafai afterwards revealed his intention to now have a major fight in the 115-pound division.
I'm struggling to hear. I'm getting echoing. I've perforated both my eardrums. My hands are pretty sore, but no excuses. I want easy in front of a hostile crowd. And yeah, on to the next one. One's a big fight. I want the likes of Estrada, Rung Vasai, Chocolatito, Ancajas, Ioka, them kind of guys. They have to be next.
And elsewhere, Amir Khan will face Australia's Billy Dibb next month after his original opponent, India's Neeraj Goyat, was injured in a car crash. Britain's Khan, 32, was due to face Goyat in Saudi Arabia on the 12th of July and earn a staggering £7 million. Former world featherweight champion Dibb, 33, will replace Goyat and has said this opportunity is like a real-life Rocky moment. Well, staying with Amir Khan, Kell Brook has claimed that Khan does not want to fight him, despite renewed hope that an agreement could be finally reached. Khan had claimed that he did want to fight the big names in the build-up to his next bout, but Brook seems to think that Khan doesn't want the fight. He talks rubbish, he says, and I haven't got time for time wasters. Brook and Khan have failed to agree a much-anticipated fight for years, but neither have any plans to retire yet, so hope remains that they could still meet. And Khan does think a meeting may be on the cards.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that Brook fight is still out there, definitely. In Britain, it'll be a huge fight. So, I mean, we in talks with Eddie still, even though I'm a free agent now for the Army for promotion. But at the same time, I'm still talking to Eddie, and I still feel like there's a lot of fights out there he can make for us.
Right, that's your lot from me this week, guys. I'll be back next week with some more UK boxing news. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. It's back to the studio.
Hey, thank you, Paul McLaughlin. Amir Khan never really wanted to fight Kell Brook, did he? That would have been quite an event over there, and it's a bummer that nobody got to see it happen. I don't think it's ever going to happen. All right, give us about 30 seconds to tell you about the best-selling book that ought to be in your personal library, and then buckle your seatbelts for an absolutely amazing interview with an old-school boxing legend, trainer Joe Goossen.
Oh, boy, is this great!
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
We heard Corrales tell Joe Goossen, I wasn't hurt, but Joe Goossen is arguing, saying, I don't care, you still can't fight that way.
Two guys who are taking the term boxing warrior to the next level. Joe Goossen is Diego Corrales' calming influence in that corner.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and today's featured guest is one of the best-known trainers in boxing, a guy whose stable has included fighters like Michael Nunn, Diego Corrales, Shane Mosley, Rafael and Gabe Ruelas, Joel Casamayor, Amir Khan, many, many others. Riddick Bowe was in there. Joe Goossen is currently working with Chris Arreola and Sergey Lippinets, and you can also hear him on Fox Sports calling live fights for PBC. So, Joe, welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show. Thanks for finding some time for us today. How are you?
No, it's a pleasure, John and Dennis. I got to tell you, though, thank you for that intro, by the way. It's very nice, and you really did your homework. But I will tell you, I thought that the stuff that we were just, the little repartee we're having for the past 5 minutes, that was some of my best material. You mean that didn't make the tape?
You know, maybe I'll cut that up and edit it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
We hate to leave out your best material.
So,
yeah.
Again, John, you say that again. Repeat that.
That was
what?
Dennis.
Hey,
okay,
Joe.
Okay, well, regardless, that was some wasted material, let me tell you. That was good stuff, guys. All right, let's go forward. We're on the interview now, and I was just a little shocked. I thought, like I say, I thought the cameras were rolling earlier.
Sorry to break your heart there. So,
yeah,
okay,
right. It did.
Here's the first thing, Joe. Here's something that a lot of our listeners might not know about your family. Your dad, Al Goossen, was a homicide detective for the LAPD, and he worked on some really famous cases, including Carol Chessman, the notorious red light bandit who died in the gas chamber in 1960, and the gang slaying of Tony Brancato and Tony Trombino, and the murder of Gladys Kern, who was a real estate agent, people might remember, who was killed while showing a home. Did your dad share any stories from his career when he'd come home from work, or even later on?
Well, again, you know your subject matter real well. I have to tell you, my dad was a very quiet, man. He had 10 kids. He worked, like all, most of us do. He worked his arse off, but his line of work was what was a little, was quite different than any of my buddies and their dads. That's for sure. Especially back in those days, the 50s, when I was raised. But he worked mafia and he first worked homicide with the LAPD, and then after homicide, he was assigned to a special unit called, it was a unit called Special Intelligence, basically like the gangster squad. And it was just mafia related crimes, or perceived to be mafia, which, left a little, open room there for, whoever it was you were searching out. But the bottom line was that it was a very dangerous line of work, and there's a lot of, when the mafia is involved. Even back then, there was a lot of treachery, and so it was he was a quiet guy. He wasn't very verbal at home. He just, if he said something, he usually was having you do something, and whether it be cleaning or whatever it was, or getting ready for a sporting event, because we all played sports. But I happened to be one of the ones that kind of picked his brain a lot, because I was like 7th kid out of 10, 8th kid out of 10. So he was a little bit older, and he was retired by then from the LAPD for many years. He had worked for the DA's office and private investigating as well thereafter. But so I was very interested in it, because I was on my way to becoming a LAPD member myself. When I was 17, I was testing for the LAPD back in 1971, 70 through 71. But that being said, I was always interested in police work, and then his specialty, which was the mafia, which was, I don't know why I was intrigued by it. So I got a lot of firsthand, information about a lot of the big cases that he worked on. So if you were to sit there with him on the couch or something and pick his brain and ask him questions, he would give you to the point answers, and but he didn't share that with a lot of people. In fact, when my father died in '85, I got all of his LAPD paperwork, his notebooks, his field investigation notebooks, and
wow,
I mean they're filled with the who's who of Hollywood. I got to tell you that, because there were a few things. There was a little bit of intrigue involved with the movie studios back then, as well, for various reasons, and so there were just names of everybody you would know. I mean, if I said any of the names, you would know exactly what actors, heads of studios, and so on and so forth. And then the mafia names, you would know quite a few of them. And again, if you did your homework, you'd understand that there were some big cases back in the 40s and 50s before they were eventually run out of Los Angeles in 55 or thereabouts. The mafia I'm talking about. So he was there from the beginning when the mafia kind of rose to great wealth in Los Angeles, and then eventually when they crashed and burned after the two murders you mentioned, Brancato, Trombino. Back then, murders on the street were very infrequent, and these two mafia guys got bumped off by a hitman who's well known, and that brought the heat down from the federal government, and the rest is kind of history. It took a few years, but there was a lot of pressure, and they kind of disassembled the apparatus that was in place with the mafia and powers that be back then.
Man, how careful was he around your family with the security? He must have been really active.
That's a great question. I think my mom was probably more worried about it than, but you would have never known it, and I'll tell you why. To tell you the truth, in the 50s, we would leave our front door unlocked, So, like anybody's worried.
Same age as you, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And, when my mom would go to the grocery store, she'd leave the keys in the car, You wouldn't do that now. You wouldn't have done that for a lot of decades now. But, so it was a different world. But I have to tell you, the respect and the authority that the LAPD and police in particular across the nation carried back then, they had a lot of cachet. And they had a lot of leeway. So if you were to cross the police back then, the mafia may have been a gang, of numbers of people. But, the LAPD also had numbers. And they were weaponized, and they weren't shy to, make sure that you weren't going to do something like attack a police officer back then, and that was a rare occurrence. So it was a different story. The police were almost untouchable back then in a lot of ways. So they didn't retaliate like that. But I could see where you would think that, and I would think that too. But the more I know about it, and I have known about it, they just were not inclined to, get revenge on a policeman back then.
Joe, you mentioned 10 kids in your family. You had 7 brothers, 2 sisters. John and I both remember Patrick was a pro, 19-3, beat Pat Lawler, who's been on this show. He's a real character. Finished his career with losses to Macho Camacho and Roberto Duran. Were all of your siblings involved in boxing in some capacity, including Greg, who played Major League Baseball?
Yeah, well, that was PJ. PJ fought professionally. He's my nephew. My brother Pat fought professionally. My brother Greg he signed with the Dodgers, my brother Greg, in 1964. Mm-hmm. Got a great shot of him I got a great shot of him in between with the Dodger uniform on at Dodger Stadium at 18 years old. And he's flanked by Drysdale and Koufax. And it's a pretty amazing shot. Yeah. I'll send it to you one, shortly.
Sure.
And so he was basically, the top draft pick in 1964 in the country.
Yep.
And, the Dodgers grabbed him, obviously, and they were one of the hottest. Dodgers and Yankees were the teams that you wanted to be in. And so he was a great ball player. And then, he got there was an archaic waiver system, it was called, back in, it only lasted like 2 years, like 1964 and 1965. This couldn't happen to your top draft pick ever again, or since then. But this waiver system somehow allowed the last place team, if you put let's say you put a couple of guys on the waiver system, it was it's hard to explain, but you tried to bury guys on it and hope they didn't get picked up and you could keep them on your roster. But there was only X amount of guys you could keep. And at a certain point, if you weren't going to keep them, you had to do something with them. So there was this waiver system that you could put them on, and if nobody picked them, you could keep them. Well, of course, Casey Stengel was the manager of the New York Mets that year, and he saw that, Greg Goossen was kind of unprotected on the waiver system, and the Dodgers, tried to bury him on it, and boy, he grabbed them.
Yep.
And that was that. So he went to the Mets in 1965. And then, of course, that year the Dodgers won the World Series. He missed it by a year.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the Mets, and he gets traded after 4 or 5 years with the Mets. The year they won the World Series, the amazing Mets.
Mm-hmm. 1969.
Yeah, he may have gone to the Senators. I think he went to the Senators back there. No, 1969. Actually, he went to the Seattle Pilots.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
And that was one of the only major league team I've ever known of that was in existence for 1 year,
And became the Milwaukee Brewers after that. Yep.
Yeah, and if you look closely at the first year Milwaukee Brewer uniforms, they were the pilot uniforms with the stitching taken off of the pilots. You can see the understitching of pilots where they put Milwaukee, and my brother pointed it out, and I said, "You got to be kidding!" And I looked it up. You sure you can see it on some of the uniforms? So, and that was wasn't that Donald Fuhr that owned the Milwaukee Brewers at that time?
I think you're right. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a former Major League Baseball beat writer, so I think you're right. You know what struck me is that when your brother made the big leagues, he was the youngest player in the history of the Mets until Gooden came along. He was only 19 years old, played in the major leagues. You were 11. This is what struck me. You were 11 years old at that time. What was it like for you to watch your big brother, a teenager, not only be an absolute superstar in 3 sports in high school, but then be in the major leagues at age 19? What was that like for you as an 11-year-old?
It was amazing because we were a sports family. So, I mean, first off, when he signed with the Dodgers, that's like, you've got to be, that's just like, forget it. You're an instant celeb at school, especially since it was a much smaller world in Los Angeles back then. And, if you played for the Dodgers, you were just like, like you say, you were as big as any movie star out here. So that was a huge thing. It wasn't unexpected, though. Greg was, even as a little kid, he was hitting home runs at Little League at a pace that, nobody had ever seen before. you have a 20-game season in Little League, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, he had 20 home runs as a 12-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah.
and he was hitting them, well over 300 feet. And, the fences were like 180 down the line. He was hitting them across the parking lots and into the other fields. So, yeah. And he wasn't like some giant kid. I mean, he ended up being a big guy, but as a 12-year-old, he was just a good, sturdy 12-year-old. But he could hit the ball. He could do anything. He could play. They would triple team him as a center. And he was all everything. But they played both ways back then. So he was he had like 22 scholarships to play any university in football. Yeah,
including USC, right? I mean, he was supposed to go to USC.
Oh, everyone wanted. He was, all everything. He was unstoppable as a football player. But I mean, in baseball, if you watched him play baseball, he looked like a grown man just doing grown man. He just looked. Yeah, I mean, everyone else looked a little behind him because he was that advanced as an athlete and player. You know who those guys are. They come around every so often, and he was one of those guys. Look, we could all play sports, our whole family. Nobody could come close. Forget it. Nobody could come close to what he could do. So it was very exciting, though. I mean, he took me on the field when I was 12 years old. When he was at the Mets, and they came into Dodger Stadium and down on the field during batting practice. Met all the players. Went down. I was in the locker room for the at Chavez Ravine. So it was crazy stuff at 12 years old.
Yeah. One more thing that I figured out about your brother today. He was involved in a trade that changed baseball. It was the trade that changed baseball.
That's right. Nobody knows about it either. That's funny that you picked that up.
Kurt Flood, the great center fielder for the Cardinals, traded to the Phillies, and he refused to report. Yeah. And instead he sued to become a free agent at a time when free agency did not exist. And the Phillies ultimately reacted by trading Kurt Flood to the Senators for your brother and two other guys. And Flood's battle for free agency wound up ending his career, Flood's career, but he ultimately won the lawsuit, which created the right to free agency for every other major leaguer who came after him. Right. And that's why big leaguers make so much money today, because of that trade that involved your brother.
That's exactly 1,000% correct. You've really done your due diligence, because the funny thing is very few people realize my brother was involved in that trade. He was with the Senator. Yeah. That is so funny that you knew. Yeah. Yeah. Very few people know that. You have to really do some digging, into the Kurt Flood situation. But you're 100% right, because before that, you, as a player, do you know how you negotiated for your salary?
Well, yeah, you went into the owner and begged, right? And he told you to get lost. You're getting what you got last year.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That's what you had to do. So can you imagine being, well, Greg was extremely young, but even if you were like a 22-year-old kid, you got to go, Walter O'Malley's office and negotiate your salary. Yeah, right.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. So I do have a couple of my father's letters on behalf of Greg to the Dodgers regarding his salary and how they went back and forth. Well, my dad was pretty good at business, and he, as you read the letter, was very cordial and very respectful. But the amount asked for was so small. It was just like you read it now, you go, oh my God! It's like, I was expecting you to ask for 10 times that. But look, they weren't in the habit of giving you money back then. They made the salaries were very low, very low.
Did that have anything to do, you think, with your other older brother Dan becoming an agent for Pete Rose?
Well, that was very serendipitous how that all came about. But, Dan, if you were, somehow in his atmosphere where he, did his business and so on and so forth, and, Dan would come in contact with heavy hitters, and one of them was Pete Rose. Now, Pete hung out at a restaurant that was right below our offices here in Encino. And so, but Greg had played at the same time as Pete. So, there was that 6 degrees there. So when Pete had ended up at this restaurant because he knew the owner, and then Dan would come down they ended up meeting years ago, because my other brother, Mike did, some legal work for Pete. So, it was more than just a hi, how'd you do? We were involved with the Pete Rose, business. But Dan renegotiated his contracts, yes, for what he does to this day, which is, he makes his living off of doing the autograph sessions, basically, in Las Vegas. So, yeah, Dan was involved with that with Pete, and they were very good friends. I mean, that was just the business end of it, and that was the least discussed part of their relationship. I was just kind of giving you an idea because you asked about Dan, being, his agent, whatever you want to call it, for certain endeavors of Pete. But more importantly, they were very good friends, very good friends, and they met almost daily at that restaurant for years. So it was a cadre of people that would descend on this particular location in Encino, including Mr. T, because he didn't live far from there. There was an assortment of people that were, it was a pretty eclectic crowd. And it was a fun lunch, And Pete was a mainstay because he lives out here used to live right out here in Sherman Oaks. And, that's where his kids grew up. So a little 6 degree separation there. But, Pete's a great guy. Very good man. Yeah. What a ball player. Was he great, man. I to this day, if I see a Pete Rose highlight reel, I'm hitting yes to watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Joe,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I was just going to put a cap on that. I don't know if there was a correlation between, Greg's contractual work and I think Dan was just, a businessman at heart, and when he got into the boxing business, it was really something he dove in head first, and he was really good at contracts and the alike that you have to be when you do this work. So I think it was just something that he was good at, and he was a great negotiator, and he used to extricate top dollar from whatever fight we were involved in. He was amazing at that. But that being said, I just think it's more coincidental than anything that happened that way. But I think he served Pete well, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a two-way street. But I think Pete liked what Dan did for him, and or else he wouldn't have kept him around. But it was, like I said, I don't think there was any correlation though between my brother's contract and the fact that he got involved with Pete on that, because Dan had done 1 million contracts with fighters,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You took the Ruelas brothers, who we all remember so well. God, they were exciting fighters, from the ground floor to the world championship, right? What kind of ride was that for you, Joe?
Oh, well, that was like I say, if you knew what you were getting into before you got into it, you may not have gotten into it in the first place. Now, I don't say that regarding the Ruelas brothers by any means. I'll tell you exactly what I want to say about that. But I will tell you, to do that run, it was a 17-year run.
Yeah.
It was one of the greatest. It is the greatest highlight of my boxing life.
Yeah.
Were Gabriel. That's all there is to it. Now, as many fun things that I've had and exciting things and kind of, things that have been popular, whatever, that's for the viewing audience. But for me personally, and my satisfaction is, I don't think there was any greater payoff, reward, personally for me than those two kids. So that said, I started them when they were 12 years old. It was an arduous road. I had fun doing it. At the time, I was a kid, so I was just like, having a great time. I was hopping in cars. We were going to, little smokers everywhere. Little amateur fights in Carson and Palm Springs, wherever. We travel around, and the years went by quickly. And Rafael turned pro at like 17. So it was, maybe 4 or 5 years as an amateur. And Gabriel turned pro thereafter at 18. So by the time I got him, it was 5 years or so, but it seemed longer, even though it went by quickly. And then once we got to the pros, I mean, they both ended up with like 60 pro fights. That's a lot of fights.
Sure is.
You know? Yeah, so between them, I did 120, bouts just with those two guys, and then another, 7,500 each, maybe 75 as an amateurs. It's a good, good amount of fights, starting at age 12-ish and probably till they were like 29 when they retire. So.
Did you, Joe? Did you know right away, pretty quick, when you got them at 12? Did you know, man, these kids, they're going places?
Well, it's again very, very astute observation. It's because it would almost have to be that way. Because if it wasn't, how do you devote such time?
Right.
Because I came from a family with professional athletes in them, and the ones that weren't pros were certainly quite a few of my brothers could have pursued that. They were really good athletes. So it wasn't. I saw a lot of great athletes just growing up. Like I said, I was at Dodger Stadium when I was 12. It wasn't because I didn't like baseball. I loved baseball. I loved all sports. So that's why I ended up in the sports field. The thought of having to go to an office to me was like, I'd rather jump out of an office building than do that. But it's really astute because the first time Gabriel I worked him out wasn't the day I met him, but the day I told him to come back. I worked him out. Once I started working him out, I said, "Oh, this kid's going to be world champion." Really? I just said it to myself. I swear to you on everything. Yeah, on everything. I swear to you. It just, and then remember, he came along. He didn't come with Rafael. I started training him because I tried to turn him away because I didn't have time. I was training Michael Nunn, or I was going to be training Michael Nunn. Gabriel came first in July of '84. Nunn came after the Olympics in '84, so September. So I knew Gabriel before Nunn, but, I had Frankie Duarte, who was a local LA guy who was big, fought for the world title, Bernardo Penango in a 15-round title fight at the Forum after a great comeback. That's whole nother long story. He got out of the profession because of some major league problems and made a comeback with me at age 27 or 28, and we got all the way back to the World Championship. It was an incredible comeback story. But that being said, I had a lot of other guys, and I had just wrapped up Randy Shields' career basically with him. I don't know if you remember Randy Shields, but he fought, of course. Oh, you know Randy Shields, of course you do. Okay. And then it slipped my mind for a minute, but Randy's and my relationship. We go all the way back to high school.
Oh yeah. Yep.
in 69. So, you know, he was just a 10th grader. I may have been 11th, I don't know, somewhere. But the bottom line is that, you know, Randy was just wrapping up his career around that time while we were starting. You know, we had already started 10 Goose in like 81, so this is 84. But long story short, yeah, Rafael came about 2 months after Gabriel. And right when I threw Rafael in the ring because I had no kids to spar with Gabriel, so I had Gabriel in great shape after a couple of months, and Rafael just did so well. I went, oh my God. The other guy who really liked the kids were Frankie Doherty, and he goes, oh man, this one's just as good as the other one. So I kept both of them, and that was that. And then we you know, to this day we're best of friends, and you know, we talk all the time and see each other all the time. So Gabriel, basically 10 years after his first amateur fight to the day, became world champion. It's like September 15th. September 15th of 84, he had his first amateur fight, and it was 10 years, almost 10 years to the date that he won his world title against Jesse James. There you are.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, 10 years there and then 7 more afterwards. So it was a long haul.
Yeah, and that's what we were studying is Rafael won a title first against Jesse James, as you said, and then Gabriel won a featherweight crown 7.
Rafael beat Freddie Pendleton.
That's right. He beat Freddie Pendleton, and then Gabriel beat Jesse James. Jesse James. Right? Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Was there any brotherly rivalry between these guys?
Not at all.
Not at all. That's good.
No, because there may have been a good, healthy, you know, it's almost like a workout friend, you know, where you could, you know, it's not lonely. You can do everything. I think their relationship helped, not hinder their ties, because if anything, they pushed each other instead of, you know, pushing against each other. They helped each other. They ran together. They trained together. They, you know, came from school together every day. No, they liked it. You know,
cool. Nice.
And it was good. It was good for them to have. They probably liked having some their age around them, because when they were kids, they were around all the big guys. You know, so it was you know, they each had each other, and I'm sure they bounced a lot of stories off each other after what they were seeing when they were kids. You know, gym. You know, it's pretty. You know what a boxing gym's like. It's a pretty rowdy place.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen them at a few boxing events, Joe. I've seen them at a few boxing events, and you can tell they're very close, and it's cool.
Oh
you know?
Yeah.
Two really good guys.
It was the thing about it was a great ride, and it went by. It seemed like it took forever, but it actually went by pretty quickly. See, I know that's kind of, that statement stands at odds with each other, but it's just weird. It's like, you know, because they're now in their mid-40s,
right?
And it does seem like yesterday, but that was a real great ride. Let me tell you, it was exciting, and they fought in a lot of great fights and a lot of great cards. A lot of great places. Yeah,
they sure did. Yeah, you mentioned Michael Nunn. Boy, I remember him. What a hell of a fighter he was. And unfortunately, he had problems later, flamed out, and got into trouble, and just did some time in prison. Just got out, which is great. How good do you think he could have been if whatever happened to him with temptation or whatever? Okay, let me say it like this. Do you think he reached his full potential as a professional boxer?
No.
Not at all. I figured.
No. But again, Mike Nunn was at a particular time. I think he was unbeatable. To tell you the truth.
Yeah.
when he left me, he was 35 and 0. Yeah. With 27 knockouts. So he was on top of the world when he was with me, and unfortunately, you know what happened. I mean, you already said it. We ran into some big trouble and ended up in jail. And just recently got out. He was there for quite a while.
Yeah.
But he never reaches the potential.
Joe, was he a handful for you as a trainer?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Was he a handful for you as a trainer?
No. Actually, Mike was very diligent.
Okay.
He was diligent because it was a tight, there was a tight circle of professionals around, and that lasted for quite some time. So he was very compliant, with the rules that you would want somebody that was working with you as an associate. Basically we're all in it together. We all have a responsibility. It's like any company. Everyone's got their job. And so he was pretty compliant. And then, once he started getting a little bit more publicity and he was a little bit, more famous and he was making more money, well, it came to the point to where it was really hard to have him in L.A. during training because a lot of people want to, hey, go out, L.A. is a party town.
Yeah.
So, and he was only, 24, 23, whatever he was. And so what I would do, and he was compliant, I said, Mike, we can't train here in L.A. I said, we got to go to a training camp. And the first training camp I ever took him to was up at Terry Norris's training camp in Campbell, California, where this is back in 85, where Abel Sanchez was Terry Norris's trainer and Orlin Norris's trainer and quite a few other guys for that matter. And so it was a ranch-style gym out in the middle of nowhere near the Tecate border near Mexico, but up in the hills in San Diego, buried way deep in the high desert. So it was a very secluded, lonely place, but, nobody could get to him, and it wasn't easy to get off the hill, and I could get my job done. And that's how we rolled through guys. Like, see, we were up there when we fought Darnell Knox. It was Manny Stewart's guy. He was 27-1 with 26 knockouts or something like that. And then we fought him for the NABF title in '86. That's when I took him up there for the first camp, and he just looked tremendous coming out of the camp. And then from then on, we stayed in camps all through the early '90s. Where we beat guys like Frank Tate, Longwell Dan. We knocked out Callum Bay in one.
Yeah.
Who had beaten Barkley, back then. We were on a roll. And then his contract came up, and he chose to go in another direction. And the ironic thing about it was that happened in probably 90. Happened in 90, I think. And he fought James Toney away from me. It was one of his first fights. Yeah, I think he had already beaten I'll remember the name in a minute. But anyway, his second fight away from me was James Toney in Davenport, Iowa. And I happened to be announcing for HBO's pay-per-view branch called TVKO. And I was announcing the James Toney-Michael Nunn fight when Nunn got knocked out by Toney in 11. And then I had to proceed to interview him in the ring. Now, this is just fresh off of our, split. So, a bit awkward, but, I did my job. It was a bit, but, I had a job to do, so I did what I was supposed to do. And, but that's how that whole thing kind of ended right there. That was it. So Nunn lost his title, and I lost my fighter. 2 fights split up because they didn't want to re-sign. He and his counsel, and that's the way it turned out, unfortunately. I think Mike, and look, I got no hard feelings. Had Mike stayed with me and he stayed true to himself, Sugar Ray Leonard even said it. When he found out Mike Nunn went to jail, he goes, "You got to be kidding." He goes, "Man, this guy, all he had to do," he goes, "I was walking through the door. He just had to walk up to the door." That's the way Leonard put it. And that was years ago. And he knew Nunn. He knew Nunn was the heir apparent. See? And unfortunately, he made a decision that did not benefit him. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Nor I. So that was the Michael Nunn saga. Oh, that was a tough one because a lot of time and effort and went into that relationship. But these things happen. Unfortunately, in boxing, more than you might know.
Yeah.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti. We are talking to trainer Joe Goossen, a member of the California Hall of Fame. And, Joe, this is a shameless plug for John and I. We wrote an Amazon bestseller 2 years ago about the Ward Gotti trilogy. But and as great as those fights were, the best fight I think I've seen in my lifetime was Chico Corrales, and you were in the corner for him the night he fought Jose Luis Castillo. And a lot of people I think that might be the best fight of their lifetimes. What was that night like for you, and that fight like for you as the corner man?
And I'm going to answer that right after I congratulate you and John on the number one on Amazon with that book, with the trilogy of Gotti and.
Hey man, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that. No, you're welcome. And Ward. That the great fights, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing those. So, those were tough fights to top in terms of just sheer action and drama. But I won't argue with the fact that the Corrales Castillo fight is probably my favorite knockdown drag out, so to speak. And not even if the fact that I was his trainer for that. I would say because of the 5-star surgical tactics being used in that fight. It was like precision operating technique by both guys. Now, each guy had his own style at how to do the surgery, but let me tell you, if you really had to do a case study for how do you dissect somebody on the inside with the most efficient precision, you would turn to that fight, in my estimation, because it was just, it'd be hard to duplicate that type of, just perfectness of delivery with the combinations, the defense. Even though they were both getting hit, the defense was still incredible because the amount of punches they threw. Not all of those landed. A lot did, but not. So you would to be able to avoid in some manner, shape, or form of getting hit flush as many punches that were thrown. Your defense, it's a very subtle thing on the inside. That's quite to me. Really stands out is just how great their defense was. All the while seeing a tremendous war going on where, many, many blows were landing. And then the other thing was how they sustained the punishment through. Look, Diego finally, the dam finally cracked in the 10th round for Diego.
Yep.
And then ultimately it cracked for Castillo in the 10th round too. Yep. So it was both, the dams were filled to capacity and they finally broke in the 10th round. But up until that 10th round, the amount of clean shots that they did get hit with, I don't know how they stood up to them, because they would have definitely leveled even some of your best fighters. So the chins that night were just, and look, I mean, Castillo had up to that point, and that night never off his feet in 60 something fights. Now come on, the only time he had ever been stopped was on cuts. He had like 50 something knockouts, not even wins. So he had like 50 something knockouts. You know, it was like 50, 6 knockouts and 65 wins. You know, some weird, I can't remember exactly, but it was close to that. You know, you can probably look it up on Google right now. But Castillo, man, was never off his feet. Never had been stopped by a KO, and had, over 50 knockouts himself. So it just, guys that were very, when you look at their overall records and saw just how many tough fights they were in and how well they did, it was just, like I said, it was all-star boxing, nose to nose. Tony Weeks, if you didn't have him as a referee, you might not be calling it the classic it is today. You probably wouldn't. And not to disparage anybody else, but Tony Weeks was the man for that night. He was the man for that night, because I'm telling you right now, because I play the game so much, and you deal with a couple of intangibles here. You've got the referee and you've got the judges, and so besides the fighter, other things you're dealing with in a fight that you have to concern yourself with. One minute in a fight like this, I got to tell you, I really think that it was just all the stars were aligned that night between the two fighter and, most importantly, the third man in the ring, as they call them,
Joe,
Tony Weeks. So yeah.
Did you come close in that 10th round to stopping it after Diego went down the second time?
I can honestly tell you, never crossed my mind. No, but there's a reason why. It's not just, boastful, bravado. No, it's only because I know what we did in camp. I know what we did. And then there's a few, you have to have a little bit, you have to be able to process certain things you're seeing in, split-second time. It may look like it's going in slow motion sometimes, but you're processing things. So as I'm looking at the view of Corrales down, I saw what he got hit with. I'm seeing, the referee, he's making his count. I look at Diego's body language, and he got up. He went down. He didn't go down pretty, but he got up strong. And that's the thing you're looking for. How does he get up? And he got up strong, and then even the second knockdown, he not only got up strong, he started arguing with Tony Weeks, which is a great. See, that gave me more confidence than anything. I go, good, he's got the presence of mind to be arguing right now.
Okay. Yeah.
About Tony took a book from him, and he didn't like it. You see? Had he just been out of it, just kind of like, what? I'm stopping the fight. But that never crossed my mind, because I never saw a negative image when it counted, which is when he gets up. Nobody looks pretty going down, but he got up strong, and on the second time he went down, he was arguing with Tony Weeks, and Tony's kind of explaining, well, you can't spit out the mouth, and I go, okay, that's all good stuff. And now that, I'm describing it to you. It took, a minute to describe it to you, but it took literally, half a second to calculate it in real time.
Joe, when you discussed that fight with Chico afterwards, in the years afterwards, I guess he only lived a couple more years, but was he as amazed as the rest of us of what he'd been a part of? One of the greatest fights in boxing history, that he was one of those guys in that fight?
I think more people reminded him of it than he ever reminded himself of it.
Mm.
I really do. I mean, because even when we did discuss it, we didn't discuss it a lot. Maybe, quickly thereafter, that night, and a couple of days after when we had, conversations going. But after that, only when we were called to do, let's say interviews or ESPN wanted to do this, then it's brought up and you talk about it. But Diego never really kind of remember how great that? No, I think what was important was what was going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, who we're going to fight next.
Mm-hmm.
When. And other business questions you might have. But I think that kind of was what was most important after that fight, even though the heat was turned up, blazing hot on the topic. Yeah, that's for sure. But behind the scenes, we're figuring out what's going to happen. Now, Diego took some time off it. That was a grueling fight. And I wish they hadn't have had the rematch so soon, if at all.
Yeah.
I mean, Pacquiao and Marquez, they had 3 fights over 5 years,
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of rushed this one. I always thought they rushed them back into the fight. Both guys it was a pretty brutal fight for both guys.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I've often said that was like 30 fights rolled into one night.
Yeah. For sure.
You should go 30 fights and not get hit with that many punches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Joe, you told me this in a text. You're working with Sergey Lippinets right now, and he's fighting a guy that you used to train, and one of my favorite people that I've talked to numerous times, John Molina Jr. Next month, and he won an IBF super lightweight title 2 years ago in his 12th fight. Lippinets did, and then lost the decision to Mikey Garcia. How high is Sergey's ceiling as a fighter at age 30?
How high? What did you ask?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. How much
high?
further? Yeah, he's got talent for sure. How much further can he go? I think?
Well, I mean, our first fight together, when we went pretty high. We stopped the two division, 2-time world champion in the 10th round and retired him. And that was Lamont Peterson, who was in tremendous shape. Now Lamont Peterson he's only lost to like 3 guys. One of them being Errol Spence, the other being Timothy Bradley?
Yeah.
And then Matisse.
Right.
He's two division champion, 40 and 47, and he came with both barrels blasting against Lippinets, and I was in his corner that night. It was our first fight together, and we stopped Peterson in 10, and it was a tug of war. And Peterson is an exceptionally clever, well-schooled fighter. He's he's technically as sound as anybody out there, and he was very brave that night. He fought with a lot of heart, and let me tell you something. Peterson broke the record for amount of punches that he's ever thrown in a fight that night. That's the type of shape he was in. See, you got to remember there's a little separating of the wheat and the chaff right now when it's coming to the welterweight division, because they're matching up all the top guys now, and then people are going to start falling by the wayside. Well, Peterson and Lippinets, so to speak, was an elimination for like a wild card fights. In other words, you've got Spence and Porter going, blah, blah, blah. And once these guys fight and, the winners of those, they're going to need other top guys to fight. Now, Peterson could have stayed in the sweepstakes had he beaten Lippinets, and that's what he was looking to do. But we were looking to do the same thing. We were looking to get into the welterweight sweepstakes right now. And Molina and Figueroa had their fight, and Figueroa won it. Well, I thought it was closer than than the judges gave it. Right?
Sure.
Most people agree with it. And and so Molina kind of bought himself a spot back on the wild card team. So, and that's why Lippinets is versus Molina. Omar Figueroa is fighting the guy who lost to Sean Porter, Ugas.
Yeah.
And then Thurman and Pacquiao. These are all welterweights, and 3 of them are getting eliminated on July 20th.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so when you ask me about John Molina, that's who we're fighting. That's my old fighter. For many, many years. Got along great. John's a fun guy, brave guy.
He sure is.
Fought some.
Yep.
He can hit like a mule.
Yep.
And he still showed some good viability against Figueroa. Now, that said, I'm training with Lippinets. He's coming off a big win. It's a big confidence booster for him. We're training under my style of training, which, he's taken to it like a cat to milk, to tell you the truth. He's really enjoying it, and I think it suits him well. But then again, I trained Molina for a number of years, too. So, he's got a little bit of the blueprint left. All right.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, I expect it to be a very tough fight. I think the Figueroa-Ugas fight is going to be. I think that's going to be a great fight. Thurman and Pacquiao, well, that speaks for itself. But I think the undercard, and they've got this other kid, Nettie, out of Tijuana, that southpaw bantamweight kid. Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him. No.
No.
Oh, this guy's
him.
like a mini Manny Pacquiao, 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, I have seen him. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Looks like he's going to be really something. He's already really good.
Oh yeah. Oh, the guy is frightening.
Yeah.
Every punch is a knockout punch, but it's pretty controlled. He's not a wild swinger. He's very athletic, very accurate. Yeah, you don't want to get hit by this dude. Wow. So those are the 4 fights on the undercard, and I've got the second fight. So plus they have a Fox show. Plus they have a Fox network show that's going to be showing the Caleb Plant Mike Lee fight along with an undercard on Fox Network, and then after that closes Fox Network, they go to the Fox pay-per-view immediately thereafter. So it's a long night of boxing.
Yeah. Another fighter you got, Joe, is a guy that's been around a long time, Chris Arreola, who is another great guy that I met years ago. He's fighting undefeated Adam Kawaski in August. Chris has got a few losses, but they're all world-class opponents. Klitschko and Wilder and twice the Berman Stavern. What's your focus with Chris at this point in his career?
Well, you make a good point because the records tell a tale, and he's never lost to anybody who's a world champion. Okay. And that bodes well. So, Chris has given me everything I've asked him to give me in the gym. He's really still youthful. 38, he's still very youthful. He's a great guy, by the way. I've known Chris since the beginning. He's been training very hard. We're going to step up to sparring this week, and we'll have most of July to spar. We've been on the floor for the past couple of months, and working on a lot of the fundamentals. Chris has a tendency to be a little wide sometimes and balanced and a little bit spread out. We've worked on all that. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel with him, trust me. But what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make all the parts work better for the model that he brings into the ring. And I like working, aggressive fighters such as Chris that can end a show quickly or take you, down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
He's a hard guy to get out of there. So, look, I think if I can get 25-30% more from him than he may not have had in his back pocket, but I could give him that something extra for reserve, tighten up the defense, shorten up the offense, put some head movement in there, some blocking skills, slipping, weaving, pivoting, using the jab a little bit more, quicker, faster combinations. I think if by the end of the day we have that all working, I think it's going to be this to be a candidate for Fight of the Year, because Adam Kovnatsky is a lot like Chris Arreola. Doesn't like to step back. He doesn't like to step back. He doesn't like to go long in a fight. If he can knock you out, he'd rather do that because he's capable of doing it. So both of these guys have the same mindset. They kind of have the same, style. They may differ in technique, but their style is aggressive, and it's a full frontal assault. So I think that's, look, there's nothing like heavyweights going at it when you got two guys like-minded like that.
That's true.
I just think it's going to be a don't miss this one show.
Yeah.
So, and Chris, I think Chris is excited also about what we're doing, and that's always a good thing. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing with the guy, especially a veteran, that it's something they may not have worked on exactly the same way or at all. And, you bring a little bit new perspective, and, so I'm glad he's enjoying that end of it, which I know he is because we discussed it. And I can see the improvement. I can just see where I think he feels like he'll be able to do better because of it all. So, that's exactly what we're working for. We're working, listen, I mean, you don't go to the gym 6 days a week, do your road work, do 3-4 hours in the gym, all the weight training, all the running, and expect to do anything but win. So, that's our mindset, and I know Kovnatsky's got the same mindset. That's what makes it interesting and hard to figure out who can win what. But I believe Chris Arreola is going to surprise a lot of people in this fight because he can crack. Kovnatsky will he'll take one, see? So,
hey, last one for you, Joe. You're an analyst now for PBC on Fox. How much do you enjoy that?
Well, I love it. I really do. It's kind of right up my alley, to tell you the truth. I don't mind talking about boxing. I like it. I like to dissect boxing. I like to bring a perspective from a corner man's point of view where, we work the gyms, we work the locker rooms, we do everything from taking them to the doctors to taking them to eat to, counseling them. We wear a lot of different hats, so we can offer a lot of perspective on what makes things tick. And I kind of enjoy the occasion to pass on some of the inside knowledge that I have to the fans and make it at least understandable to the common person, and also guide them through a fight where they may, because sometimes when you're a novice at watching boxing, a lot can slip by you because some of the stuff is so subtle. You don't really even realize it's happening right in front of your eyes. So I've heard it from, a few people that, I'll tell you, it was my daughter and some of her girlfriends. They go, my daughter's been around boxing, but she said, it's good that we can understand exactly what you were saying. So that kind of made me feel good, even though it was my daughter. The bottom line is that that's what I try to do. I just try to make it so that if you're sitting on your couch watching at home, and I'm just not saying, hey, he got hit with a left or right, but why things are happening, what he could be doing to counter the effects, and have you follow along in a way that's easily understandable. So that's what I'm trying to do. I hope I'm conveying that. And according to my daughter, I'm doing all right, but she better give me a good review.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, man, this has been an absolute blast. I hope you had as much fun as John and I did. This was a really good time.
I got to tell you, I'm very impressed. I'm impressed that you guys, like, I have to, study my opponent. When we're going to fight, his every move. You guys really did your homework, and I can appreciate that. So I tip my hat to you on that one, because you guys really had some. I mean, I think the Kurt Flood trade for my brother was really that's like really deep rabbit hole. That's a good one. So now,
hey, like I said, man, I'm an old Major League Baseball writer from way back. I was 5 years.
Yeah.
As a beat writer. Yeah.
When were you writing? What year? What years were you writing for baseball?
I covered the Blake Street Bombers in Denver, Colorado Rockies, from 1993 till 1997. It was Bichette and Galarraga and Castilla and Larry Walker and Ellis Burks, and man,
Larry Walker, Ellis Burks, oh yeah,
Ellis Burks, yep.
How about Larry Walker? Man, Larry Walker was something else, wasn't he?
Great player. And I don't know if you know this, but Larry Walker's nickname on that team was Booger, and the reason it was Booger is because before every game he'd trot all the way to the right field fence and he'd wipe a booger on that right field fence. And there was, if you ever went out there was a whole bunch of them on that right field fence.
Oh my!
I'm just glad you told me that story after I had dinner.
That's right.
Hey man, thanks for making so much time for us tonight on the Ringside Boxing Show. It was great talking to you.
There was.
No, I really had a great time, you guys, and I enjoyed the repartee and the fact that you guys were well prepared. It was a pleasant surprise, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, we got a lot left for you, so let's do it again sometime. All right?
You bet.
Anytime.
We'll do it again.
All right, John. Thank you. We'll talk
Joe
to you
Goossen is a member of the California Hall of Fame. He trained the Ruelas brothers. He trained Diego Corrales, Joel Casamayor, who we didn't even get to talk about tonight, Riddick Bowe, Shane Mosley, Amir Khan. His late great brother Dan was a major promoter in the sport, and he was also a baseball agent for Pete Rose. He was an agent for Mr. T, the bodyguard and TV actor. Patrick Goossen was 19-3 as a pro. Another brother, Greg, played Major League Baseball, and their father was an LAPD homicide detective. Quite a family, huh? Hey, we want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Risponti, for their weekly contributions to this show, as well as our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin. And another huge thanks to today's featured guest, Hall of Fame trainer, Joe Goossen. And, of course, we thank you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again tonight. Keep your chin tucked, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's